Okay, I was thinking about this HEEDS problem, and I think the solution is to use Microsoft Excel. I have an example here using Excel, and I'll do a quick demo of what I'm looking at. Just erase my previous thing, and then we'll step through and do it exactly how I set this up. So we're going to wait for this to load. Okay, so Excel is open in here, and what's happening is code is being run in Microsoft Excel. Um, each time HEEDS updates the values in Excel, a macro inside of Excel is running and talking to FEMAP. And so this allows me to keep FEMAP open, and this is a nice feature that HEEDS has implemented for Microsoft Excel. Ideally, we would want HEEDS to operate on FEMAP the way it is currently operating on Microsoft Excel. I have a message out to the HEEDS support group asking them exactly if that is possible using Microsoft COM. But barring that, this does look like a solution in order for us to keep FEMAP open and keep a process running all at the same time. So you'll see here, this is a simple problem. I'm setting up a HEEDS example that's minimizing the value of f of x here and starting from a range that I'll show you in HEEDS. I think it's something like x -5 to +5, and then y. Let's see what it is actually. So it's a simple math problem. It's just doing a parabola. So we know that the minimum value would obviously be at the bottom of this parabola at y is -10. So he does the Sherpa algorithm, so you can see from the printout in FEMAP, we have the y-axis value coming in at 10 a few times as it jumps around, and that's because HEEDS has a really good algorithm as it jumps around trying to find local and minimum maximum. But we won't even go into that. But this is showing how with FEMAP open as a process, Excel can talk to it, and HEEDS can interact with Excel. And that's because I actually found a video describing exactly that. So this is just a Excel process, and we use the show Excel application during study run, and we do not use save modified workbook for each design. And this seems to be working for me. I think we can get away with maybe not showing Excel. We can give that a try, and that way it might even be quicker. HEEDS will actually lock Excel so that it performs a little faster. But if we don't have to display the graphical user interface, that would actually be even faster to speed up the Excel process. So here you can see it almost looks like nothing's happening in Microsoft Excel at all, but we do know that Excel is being talked to in the background here, but it appears to be working. So it's running the exact same job here, but for all intents and purposes, it looks like HEEDS is just talking to an open FEMAP. Now, this is just an example where the messages are coming through, but obviously for any kind of script, it's going to be able to generate geometry, generate mesh, do things. I'm going to stop this here. And that's because in this process for Excel, HEEDS has a nice portal set up that it lets you run a macro either before setting a variable or after setting a variable. So without further ado, let's restart this process, and I'll try to take it from the ground up and show you how I got to this solution. So let's do a file new in HEEDS, and I'm going to click on my analysis here, and instead of general, I'm going to come down to Excel, which is right above FEMAP. So input and output. Okay, so I'll collapse this one, and we'll save this as a new project. So I've done this a few times. I'll make this example 3. Okay, and now we're going to make a new Excel enabled, macro enabled workbook, and that's going to allow us to talk to FEMAP. So the FEMAP API, you can run it in FEMAP. You can also connect to the FEMAP API through other programs, and Microsoft Excel has a programming interface in it in the Developer tab. Now, the Developer tab might not be available. If you don't see the Developer tab, you can go to File, Customize. I think there's a way to add it in your ribbons. I think it's File, Options, Quick Access Toolbar, Customize ribbon, and we're going to go Developer. So I check that on. You'll be able to access this Developer tab. So when I'm in the Developer tab, I can click this View Code button, and it brings me into this code editing pane, which is very, very similar to FEMAP. So in this code editing pane, I'm writing Visual Basic Code in Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft Excel can run this code and either perform operations in Excel or talk to other programs via the OLE-COM interface. So what we're familiar with in FEMAP is when we do a API, when we look at connecting to FEMAP, it's done for us right at the beginning. FEMAP sets this up so that we can run these APIs in the same process as FEMAP. But this is not the generic way to connect to applications. This is the FEMAP way to connect to the FEMAP application. So when I'm in Microsoft Excel, what I can do is use a GetObject, which you may or may not be familiar with. Before I do that, though, I'm going to insert a module here, just because I prefer to work with modules in Excel versus Sheets. Sheets will run code on a sheet. Module, you can call it from buttons in Excel that you add, or you can call it more appropriately with different macro titles. So I'm going to call this sub FEMAP, and I'm going to say dim app as object, and then set app equal to get object, comma, FEMAP.model. Now this is the way to connect to FEMAP. So this is the completely generic way, and what I'm going to talk next about is a type library, but as of right now, let's prove that this works. So app.feappMessage is the FEMAP command for sending a message. 0 is shorthand for that enumeration, but it will print normal text. And I'll say testing, and now if I hit play, and so we have a compile error, so live thing, we'll see what's wrong. Because this is expecting a return code, Excel's compiler expects a full, complete thing, whereas sometimes in FEMAP and other basic codes you can get away with not doing this return code, but we're going to need that. So we see that, and we see it's printing right there to testing. Just making sure I'm still recording. Okay, so we know that's working. Now, what you'll miss here is the IntelliSense in the way that I did this. So an easy thing to do, especially if you're not looking to do things all over again from by hand, we're going to go to Tools, References. We're going to add a reference to the FEMAP type library. So that's going to allow us to use the IntelliSense, and it's going to be a little bit more performant. It's going to have a little bit better performance than just using late binding without that type library. So I'm going into FEMAP 12. It doesn't like me navigating that way somehow. So we're going to go to Computer, C, Program Files, Siemens, FEMAP 12. Let's see, FEMAP 1201. Okay, so FEMAP TLB. That's what I want. FEMAP TLB. FEMAP DLL is used in C++ environments and other C# environments. FEMAP type library will work for Microsoft Excel. So there it is. Inserting the FEMAP type library, we say OK. All right, so now we can kind of do what we are familiar with here, where we are dimming things by FEMAP class names. So we're going to say, instead of object, we're going to say FEMAP dot, and you'll see FEMAP.model. And now if I remove this line and I do it again, FEAppMessage, we can see I have my IntelliSense back. Okay, great. So test 2, let's make sure that runs. Test 2. Okay, so now we're connecting to FEMAP. So GetObject is a way to connect to a already running instance of FEMAP, and I just do have to comment that GetObject has a limitation that is a Microsoft COM limitation that is nothing to do with FEMAP or even Microsoft Excel in that matter. Every single program, whether it's Visual Basic, C++, C#, no matter what it is, has a limitation that if GetObject is used, it will always connect to the first instantiated instance of the program that you are connecting to. So if I have 4 different FEMAPs open, it's going to attach to the first FEMAP that was opened, and that is a limitation that's baked into Microsoft Component Object Model. There might be something to be done to get around it in terms of closing FEMAPs and re-registering them, but we will get into that if needed. Okay, so we have this program from Excel talking to FEMAP. So how do we get HEEDS to talk to Excel to then talk to FEMAP? That's what we ultimately want, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do in HEEDS is set up that exact same sample problem. Now, in other API codes, we can do a whole manner of things. We can do variants, we can do lists, but we're going to keep it simple for now just to see how to change two variables. And ideally, you can just scale this up to 10, 20, 2,000 variables if needed. So I'm going to put a x variable here. I'll just call it 1 for now. HEEDS is going to affect that, so it doesn't matter as much. I'll make a b for my y-intercept. I'll call it 0. And then I'll make an f of x entry, and I'll say, is equal to this squared plus this. Okay, I'll zoom in on that. So I'm going to shrink Excel down just so we can see it, because it's going to open it up like we showed in the demo. So I'll save that, and we're going to save this as a macro-enabled workbook. So we're going to put that somewhere in just our development folder. So we'll say HEEDS Excel test 3. We'll put this down in the MTech folder. Okay. Ooh. And so we want to save, so this is a good catch. These features cannot be saved in a macro-free workbook. To save a file, click No and choose macro-enabled file type in this file type list. Continue saving as a macro-free workbook, click Yes. So I do not want it to be a macro-free. I want it to be a macro-enabled workbook. So I'm saying No. I want this type to be Excel macro-enabled workbook. Okay, so now we should be good. We see it's been appended with an M for macro-enabled, and the icon will change for that as well. Okay, so now I should be done with Excel. Oh no, I'm not. Okay, so I'm going to open that back up. I want to edit the code that I'm talking to FEMAP with. I want to create some printouts. We're going to enable this content. I'll go back to my developer tab, back to my module. Okay, so now instead of just printing test every time, I want to print the values that is in Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make some variables here that correspond to what I have there. So I'll say x is equal to the string value of cells 1, 2, where it's row and then column. And b is equal to the string value of cells 2, 2, and then answer is equal to the string value of cells, you guessed it, 3, 2. Okay, so now let's get rid of this test, and I want to print x equals x, and we'll make it n to make it a little more clear, and x, and y is equal to, or b is equal to b, and f of x is equal to answer. So I'm going to bake that right into the method, right into the input for the string argument there. So if I play this again, you'll see now we've got x equals 1, b equals 0, f equals, so it's pulling right from here. My spacing's a little off, I'll just change that, maybe put a comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's do that again. So now it looks a little cleaner when we print it. All right, so let's clear the messages window. This, for all intents and purposes, is the only code I need to let me know that something is happening in FEMAP and everything's coming through, so I'll save that. Ideally, what's going to happen is that FEMAP scripts that are written here are going to be more comprehensive and actually interact with FEMAP in a meaningful way. So we can close that, we can close that. So now let's set it up in HEEDS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say show Excel application during study run. So I'm on the Excel portal, and now I can add my files. So I'm going to add an input file. I right-clicked. So now I choose my macro-enabled workbook. HEEDS detects that Excel is something it can talk to regularly, so it's offering to auto-tag for me. I'm going to skip this for now because I did have a little bit of a hitch when I was auto-tagging, so I'm going to not auto-tag, but it's recognized that it wants to be my input and my output file, so that's good. I'll save that. So now I'm going to move on to my parameters. So in variables, I'm going to add a variable. I'm going to make a variable x, add another variable b. I'm going to add a response, call it answer. And now I'm going to finally tag it. So in my Excel input file, I'm going to go to my X variable. I want to tag that as my X variable. In my V variable, I want to tag that as my V variable. And in my output, I want answer to be tagged as that. Okay, and so you can imagine like a list of columns here or a list of variable values, what have you. And we know that HEEDS can update that. So now I go into my study. My study contains setup errors. So what are my errors? I just don't have an objective. So if I drag him over, or I could have hit add objective. So now it looks like everything should run smoothly. I have this set to minimize value. I could do minimize difference, minimize value. I'm not as familiar with HEEDS, so these different parameters, I'm trying to keep it simple. So now if I run, hopefully everything works, and oh, okay. Oh, and I didn't put any values in, so let's go back to my parameters. Okay, so now I'm going to do something like -5 by 1 to +5, and my y-intercept, I'm going to go from -10 by 2 to +10. Okay, that's the same number of entries. Oop, lost my 10 there. Let's make sure we have that. Save. Okay, now let's run. So let's hopefully fire up Excel. Awesome. Okay, so now we see Excel's running. Looks like we are not printing the FEMAP, and that's because I forgot to put in my macro entry. So I'm going to stop this. This is a good catch. So we're going to go back to process, and in Excel, go to Excel portal. So we went before setting these variables or after setting these variables. I'm going to say after, and I forget the name of my macro. I think it was just plain FEMAP, but I'll double check. So I'm opening up Excel, developer, view code, down to my module. It was FEMAP. Okay. So close that. I don't need that. I don't need that. So now just simply typing in FEMAP. If I put a semicolon, I could do multiple macros that will execute, but I just need the one. FEMAP, save to the run. Let's erase the previous stuff. And it looks like I'm still not getting values. And why am I not getting values? So let's look back at our Excel process. We should be pulling from the values there. Let's see. That is correct. Let's rename this module. Let's just call it main FEMAP. There we go. Might have been something wrong with the name of that macro. Who's to say? So there we are. We're off and running. This looks like to be a solid foundation to start with. There's probably more we can do in terms of optimization, locking the screen of Excel. Again, hiding the Excel process so that the GUI does not have to update would produce marginally better returns. FEMAP itself could also probably be hidden, or at least in a locked state so that the graphical user interface doesn't have to be updated until everything is complete. But I think right now this is a way to utilize HEEDS, talking repeatedly to the same processes without having to close and reopen each time.